authentic, be accountable, be disciplined.
Thank you, Lauren, for getting on.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We'll have a great conversation. It'll be fun. Real quick, Lauren Hite is here. A little bit about her. I'll let her do the talking, but pro triathlete, experienced in all different things, which I want to talk about, and just all around really badass girl. So, yeah, excited to have you here. I know a little bit about you, but I think it'd be great to start with that and maybe explain who you are, your background, where you're from, things like that, so people listening can understand a little more. So, if you want to, Virginia now, but born and raised where?
Actually, born and raised in Virginia, where I am currently, and then I lived in Alaska for 8 years.
Yeah.
Lots of weird things about me. I was a powerlifter for a while, and then I kind of transitioned into endurance sports and then became a professional triathlete, then started coaching triathlon, and now I'm working on getting my commercial pilot's license to fly for the airlines one day. So I'm just all over the place.
Yeah.
You never know what I'll do next.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. I think we'll talk a little bit about each, because I think that's really cool and a really great part about you, that you have such a diverse background of all different things and passionate about a lot of different things. So I think that's great. Did your family, were they into athletics at all? Did they do anything in endurance sports? Your parents?
No, actually, I mean, my mom, she dabbled in it a little bit. She did do some shorter triathlons, a lot more running, but she ended up getting injured and getting out of it. My dad, definitely not. My dad and I have always been into the motorcycles and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
They're not like the most athletically gifted people. So I don't really know where I got it from, but I'll take it, not complaining.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I get that. You know, I look at, like, I'm a little bit of a blend of my parents and things like that, but you go on your own way, do your own thing. I get that. Your mom did some sprint distance, Olympic distance. Did you do anything big?
Yeah, no, she actually never did. It's funny. I think back to like when I signed up for my first Ironman. My mom and I had a conversation about it when I was a kid, and she had told me, like, I think she was doing an Olympic triathlon, and I was there watching her, and she was like, these people, they do these half Ironmans that are like, and she told me the distances, and then she said, and then they do the full Ironmans, and I was a kid, and I was just like, and they run a marathon after all. I thought it was the craziest thing ever, and I said, I was like, that's like something superheroes do, like, I'll never be able to do that. And then I don't know, it's just crazy. I ended up signing up for a while and I did it, so.
Yeah, I had the same thoughts growing up of, you would hear the term and it just didn't make sense. You know, you felt like the 0.01% of the population would do a marathon anyways. And then you hear about people doing swimming, then biking a massive distance, and then doing a marathon. It's hard to comprehend for me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I enjoy triathlon. Still hard for me to comprehend a full Ironman, because it just seems like such a daunting task. And you told me a while ago, and I always think of it, and I've told many people of, when it comes to a full Ironman, you prepare to the best of your abilities, you execute, and then you really just go until shit starts to fall apart. And how long can you hold on? And
exactly.
I mean,
it's very mental. It's a very mental distance. It's so different from the half, because I've done both, and it's just a wildly different experience, especially if you go backwards like I did. My first ever triathlon was an Ironman. So after you do that, everything else just seems so much easier. Like literally everything in your life, it's crazy. There's nothing like doing an Ironman.
I'm excited for it. 2025. That's going to happen. As you know, I've told you that, so I'll be able to be in that same boat as you and have those feelings. You mentioned your mom doing some triathlons. As you saw, I told you my dad did one this weekend. So he was part of that. Really cool. My dad. Yeah. Well, not to bash him too bad, but he did cross the finish line dry heaving, and was a little green, blue-lipped, gagging a little bit, but he doesn't do hot running, warm weather, and it was a pretty muggy day, and I think the heat got to him, but he did amazing. My sister, talk a little bit about family. Yeah, she came from I will not sweat, I don't like to sweat, to did a triathlon this weekend. So we had a really fun time. My brother-in-law, sister, dad, and I all competed in the same triathlon together. So
that's so awesome. Do they have the bug now? Are they going to start signing up for more?
Little too soon to ask. My sister afterwards, I asked, and she said, never doing that again, I believe. But she did 2 half marathons this year and has come a long way and is doing amazing. And my dad, we'll see. He was a marathon runner. I think he's done 20 marathons maybe. Qualified for Boston. That was a big part of his life. And then was a high school swimmer, or throughout childhood, and then high school swimmer. So he had a lot of it pegged that we're like, Dad, why don't you just go ahead and do the whole thing? I mean, you might as well. So, especially
with the swim background, like that's the one thing that I wish I had done when I was a kid is swimming. Because learning that as an adult, as you know, is brutal. Very brutal.
That's definitely somewhat what I wanted to talk about today. With your background, and you're a professional triathlete, so that's amazing. That's very cool. A lot of people are scared. Well, let me take a step back. I talk to a lot of people about triathlon, and they are bikers or runners, and they say, I'd love to do it, but to swim, and I can't swim. And I think that'll be, let's talk about that swim portion a little bit. And I know from my experience, it's brutal. 2.5 years ago, would kind of be classified as I couldn't swim. To, splashing around in a pool is not really swimming. Actually, to think of a freestyle swim, face in the water, breathing, that was very daunting. And as I showed you the other day, I mean, I went from about 2 minutes and 30 seconds 100 to 1 minute and 40 some per 100 on similar distances. It's achievable with practice, with hard work. So, did you have any swimming background before you did any of that?
No, just like playing around the lake, that kind of thing. Never actually like freestyle swimming. I was very comfortable in open water and just being in water. I loved it. But I found that even I would be like a little panicky trying to learn freestyle. I remember getting like really out of breath. I could only swim a few laps. And that's the thing is, like, I always tell people, almost everyone starts out like that. I've seen so many people start where they couldn't even swim one length of the pool. And then over time, they're doing an Ironman. It's crazy. And so I'm always just like, don't be discouraged. Like, almost everyone starts there. I started there and I'm like, oh, I'm so confident in water. And then I'm like, kind of like out of breath, just swimming 50 yards or whatever. So it just takes time. You have to be patient. And it's really the most rewarding because the improvements are so great in swimming usually that it's pretty much the most rewarding one. So you have to look at it that way.
The feeling of a swim workout is awesome. I think that's one of my favorite, low impact to the body, which is great. I think it's good for you. Now that I've tried to learn how to swim and I'm getting a little bit better, I'm all about, like, man, I wish I would have swam when I was younger, swim team. It wasn't what cool, to do and things like that. And, that's crazy. I'm hoping my children will get on the swim team and get involved with that a little bit because.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Lifelong
it's a great sport. It's a great sport. Yeah, you can do it when you're old, but also like even kids doing it. Swimmers work really hard. It teaches them just at a very young age. It is a very good thing to do any of that sports in general. But I've always known swimming as my friends who swam when I was in school. I remember just being like, wow, you guys are probably swimming twice a day. That's crazy, like at that age. So yeah, it's wild. Yeah,
it is. And it was tough. And then you add open water into the element of a triathlon. That's a whole new world. I mean, I started swimming in a pool. Like you said, living in Alaska, you did a lot of pool swimming up there. And then you go to a lake. And as you know, we've talked about it. I'm scared of dark water. I'm working on it. It's getting better. I think the first time you and I talked about swimming, I said, well, I swim with my eyes closed. You're like, what the hell is wrong with you? It was just more comfortable. I'd look when I breathe, look when I psych, and I would just be eyes closed. I don't want to see those fish. I don't want to see those dead bodies. I would just, nope, not my thing. But it's getting better. But that intimidates the hell out of people, the swimming. Yeah,
and with the other people near you makes it, and it's just nerve-wracking. It's the start of a race. You're nervous at the start of any kind of race, and then you get thrown into dark water with a bunch of other people that are like hitting you, pulling on you, and it's anxiety-inducing, I think, for just about anyone. I've never had a swim start that I wasn't like, oh, like I need to calm down here. Like I feel a little panicky every single time. Every time.
The recovery from swimming is also something I find so interesting of. If I go for a long bike, really hard bike, I'm like gassed. And I don't know if you feel the same where I do a swim, I feel gassed, like dead. I'm done. But then in like 5 minutes, I'm kind of like, you could have kept going. Like the recovery is very fast, I feel, from like my body and everything, where it's like you felt done, but you just keep it going. And, but it's tough, I tell you. I've appreciated all the knowledge you've given me, and I've really invested some time in researching swimming and trying to just understand it and get comfortable. And it's coming, but it's hard. And I know a lot of people are just so intimidated. So what would be for new triathletes, would you say, from a swim perspective, just time in the water? Yeah, just putting in the time. And like we do, you just have to work on a couple of things at a time, because there's so many things. Of somebody is new to swimming and they first get in the water, I mean, I could sit there and pick apart everything they're doing wrong, and then they are going to go to the pool the next time so overwhelmed, not even sure what to focus on, and they're not going to make any progress like that. You have to pick a couple of things, get those figured out, move on to the next. And it's a process, and it takes forever, and there will always be something you can do better. Even the Olympic swimmers, there's always something that they can do better. It's just never ending. So, I mean, you look at it that way, it's really interesting, and you'll never get tired of it because there's always something to improve upon. So yeah, I mean, the stat that you sent me last week of when you were training, I've told several people that, and I'm still amazed that you did 1 million yards of swimming. Yeah, well, that doesn't even, like, not even trying to, like, brag, but for real, the goggles I did not get until later into my journey, and so it is missing, like, a giant chunk of swim camp the time before that, and my races, obviously. And so it's just, to do that much swimming just to get like 5 minutes off of my Ironman time. Right. It's just, you've got to love what you're doing, because that's the reality of it, all the disciplines. You work and work and work, and maybe after you've been biking for a long time, you know, a year's worth of biking, you get 5 watt increase in your FTP, and that's just how it is. You just have to like appreciate the little things along the way and love what you're doing, and not get so caught up in the progress, like always needing that to be motivated. Yeah, absolutely. You made me think of, I've seen some of those reels and interviews with Michael Phelps, obviously decorated swimmer, that he was, I think, like 3 years every day in the pool. Never missed 3 years, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, every day in the pool. And from what I've gathered, the more you can swim, it just gets comfortable, and it's how you get better. And when I was injured, you know, I was doing 4 days a week or 5 days a week swimming, and I think that's what did put a good trajectory on the swim. Yeah. And if you're like short on time, like most people with full-time jobs, it's better if you can just get to the pool more often for a shorter amount of time than just going once a week for like an hour. And that's not going to really drive progress. It's frequency with the swim. You have to get in that pool. Otherwise, the more time you're out of it, you spend half your session trying to find your flow again and the feel for the water, and it just ends up being kind of a waste that way. So I always say, if you can just go for 30 minutes, like 3 times a week, I prefer that over just a couple of times or once a week. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's good. And there's some decent pools around. You just have to invest the time and energy and money in getting at a pool. It is the most foreign of 3 to people, you know, right? It is. Just trying to figure out the swim. So hopefully some people that I've talked to lately, and maybe that listen to this, willing to give it a shot and try some swimming. And once you get comfortable, it's so like, it's therapeutic, honestly. Like, your head's in the water, you can't hear anything. Once you find that, like, get rid of the anxiety of being in the water, it's really relaxing and wonderful. I'm waiting for that. Yeah, you can't beat it. Yeah. You're one of those people that says it's meditative, and I know some people that, swimming's my therapy. I'd rather swim. Swimming is borderline torture for me. It's very hard. So I look forward to meditative swimming. I just am not there yet. You push your swims very hard, though, like every time, though, which is part of your problem. You've gotten a lot better. But when you started, I'll never forget, like, I literally said recovery swim, and I would look and your P would be like an 8 or a 9, like your perceived exertion. And I was just like, Brian, recovery swim, not a perceived exertion of 8 out of 10. Why that is I struggle when I swim slow, or I feel my form goes to hell. Like, it's easier to pull steady and hard than it is to be easy for me. But I need to work on that. But that is what it is. Takes time. Yeah. This swimming made me think, just a funny story my brother-in-law was just telling of a big race. He was down at Chattanooga, 70.3 in Chattanooga. And this goes into something to talk, endurance, long, lengthy endurance sports, you get pretty disgusting. Like your body, like what you do to yourself. And we were laughing about the swim portion of it. At an Ironman, there's thousands of people lined up and it's hot and everyone's in their wetsuit walking down this concrete path to go to the pool. And you would think it's just like water. And then you're like, well, no, nobody's in the water yet. And it's just puddles of pee that everybody's peeing themselves on their way to the. Okay.
And you have to walk through it to get to the start. You're just standing in it. Yeah. It's hell.
My dad always said that there's two types of people. Admitting that you're peeing in your wetsuit, or you're lying that you're peeing in your wetsuit. Okay.
That's exactly right.
It's true. It's true. But yeah, it is gross when you go long term for that level and sweating and everything else you're doing. It takes you to the level.
It's crazy. Everyone's peeing on their bike, and people that are new to the sport, then they'll ask me, do they actually pee on their bikes? Like, yes, they are peeing on their bike. Like, we don't have time to stop.
No,
we don't have time for that.
I think I asked you that early on, and I took your advice. And last weekend I had that really big long race, and I peed on myself 4 times. While I was there.
It feels so wrong. It feels so wrong, but you get used to it.
Very hard to pedal and pee.
You have to stop. I can't do it on pedaling. I have to stop everything completely. It is what it is.
Yeah, it was after that race of between sweating for 8 hours and peeing on myself and everything else and squirting, trying to drink the fuel that I'm drinking and it's pouring on you. And, like I told you, I came off that mountain and my legs were like fly traps that you hang in your house, like just sticky. It was a lot. Yeah, good shower after that.
Yeah, it's gross. It really is.
But talk about the bike. So we started talking about the bike a little bit, and I think that's a very interesting aspect of it. You're really good at the bike. We've talked about the bike a lot. You've spent hours on the trainer, 5-hour rides, sitting in place in your garage.
Yep.
Tell me about the bike and maybe some tips you'd give people on that are trying to take their bike from joyriding to pushing it a little bit harder and being able to compete on a bike.
The bike is a special one. I think it comes down to pain tolerance, truly, and strength, because it's not like running. If you run at a 145 heart rate, that feels real different than biking at a 145 heart rate. Absolutely. Because it's a strength thing. And a lot of people that are new to cycling or don't have a strength background, they come into it and they're like, can't even get their heart rate aerobic and their legs are on fire. And it's frustrating, but it just takes time. You have to do the work. You have to be in the saddle, get stronger. And truly, I think the lifting in the gym helps big time. I think that's why I came in just being very strong from the get-go on the bike, is because I had so much strength from powerlifting. I just needed to build up like the cardio. So I had no problem getting my heart rate up, almost too much. But I really needed to be able to work on my cardio, and that just took time and building up aerobic fitness. But yeah, with the bike, it's strength and it's pain tolerance, and that's just the truth. Is some people don't have that, and they need to work on it and just understand that it hurts, and it hurts for hours, and you just have to get comfortable with that feeling and expose yourself to it, and then you end up getting better at it, and you learn how rewarding it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a reel or video where a lady had got off the trainer and she had like the shakes of her legs, like the muscles twitching and everything, and just you could tell she just tortured herself. And it's like it's pretty hard for some people to think I'm going to put myself into that situation, because we live in a cushioned world. We know that it's easy to be lazy, and being uncomfortable is really difficult for people to say, I'm going to intentionally do this that's very hard and that hurts and that I'm sweating and I'm uncomfortable. That's really hard for people, but I find it amazing what you can put your body through, for sure.
Yeah. And for the bike with me, it comes down to just breaking it down, the time into segments. When I have really hard intervals, I always just break them down into manageable pieces that I can mentally handle, put on really good music, just try to remember my goals and be like, I just gotta get through another minute, just another minute. And then you learn to enjoy. It's kind of weird. Over time, you learn to enjoy this pain. It's strange. And then you get done and your legs are just aching and you're like, man, like I feel so good and you want to do it again. It's crazy. It becomes addictive, honestly.
It does. Absolutely. So then the third leg is the run. A lot of people are runners out there, and I do want to talk about your fantastic feat earlier this year that you had, but from bike to run, that's a tough thing for people of bike legs when you're going circular for so long and using those muscles, and you get off a bike and your legs feel like jello, and to try to run, that's tough. What leg did you enjoy most, or do you enjoy most of?
The run, because I have a background in running from high school, and so I've always just felt like running is really natural to me. And that was my strongest. So when I would get off the bike, I knew it was my time to catch people, was on the run. And really, it's the thing about it is you'll always have those tired legs if you bike hard in a race, which you should. Your legs are going to be tired. That's normal. You learn that you can run on tired legs through your training. You do those break workouts. You've done it a million times. You know, you get off the bike, you can't even get your leg over the saddle, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to run. You somehow do it, and then you get that confidence. And then on race day, you're like, hey, it's just another day of training. Like, I know I can run on tired legs, and you do it. It's just, you just get used to that feeling. It doesn't really ever go away. My legs are always tired running off the bike, but you just learn, I can run like this, just confidence. But yeah, I came from running background. I ran all the way through high school.
Track, distant, or sprinting?
Yeah. I did cross country, long distance, and then track. I did mostly mile, 2 mile, some 800 mid distance stuff. But then I did try sprinting. I got really tall out of nowhere in high school and got really slow. And so I ended up doing sprinting for a short amount of time. I'm not a fast twitch girl. It was fun, but I was not good at it. Went back into distance. I did consider running in college, but I ended up just wanting to focus on school. So I ran for fun, strictly, in college.
Where did you go to college?
I went to college at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth in Richmond. So, great school. Loved it.
Yeah. The running background, which leads me to talk about your big feat this year, sub 3 hour marathon.
Yeah, that was a big goal of mine for a really long time.
Amazing. Tell us about that whole journey. When did you want to do it? Your prep for it, the execution of it, and post-race feelings.
Yeah, that had been a goal of mine for a long time. So I've only run 2 standalone marathons, honestly. My first one ever was before my Ironman, so that's what kind of got me into the whole endurance thing. I've been powerlifting, and I tell you, this is crazy. For the entire, I think, 7 years or whatever that I was strictly powerlifting, I was not doing cardio. So, hardly. And then I started just, missing running and missing my, just feeling athletic. So I signed up for a marathon, started training for it, and I was like, man, I'm running better than I did in high school. This is crazy. And I'm like, man, I feel like I have some potential here. My first marathon was 3 hours, 12 minutes. So I was like, man, with a little training, I do think I could break 3 hours if I did this in my first one. But, Wynn did Ironman for a while. And actually, my goal was to actually break 3 hours off the bike, but ended up just being like, I'm going to do this standalone. So I signed up for this marathon kind of on a whim here recently. I think it was March. And I was just like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to break 3 hours. And I had all the confidence in the world I could do it. I knew what I was capable of. So I just did the training and went for it. It was crazy because I had been dealing with plantar fasciitis for the last 6 weeks or so before my race, and it got pretty bad, honestly.
Explain what that is to some people may not know.
It's when the plantar fascia gets inflamed. It's very painful. A lot of people actually have that from jobs standing on their feet all day.
Yeah.
It's really painful. You can hardly walk or stand your foot, especially in the morning. And just running, especially when you start your run, it feels like you're gonna rip your foot open. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible pain. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. It's not fun to have that injury, and it's super common in running, unfortunately. So yeah, I had been dealing with that. I thought my taper for the marathon was gonna clear things up. It got worse somehow, and I'm talking a couple days out from my race, I was just limping on my shakeout runs, and I'm like, ugh. But then, I woke up race morning, I did my warm-up, and I was like, okay, it's not too bad. I don't know if it was adrenaline or what, but I didn't feel it that much. And I started running, and everything was going great. I was under pace. I was feeling really strong, honestly, the whole way. And around 22 miles out of nowhere, I felt this pop in my foot, and it was excruciating. And I was like, oh, no, And I was actually was the first female at that time. I had passed and taken first place around mile 6. So I had been in lead for a while. I'd already decided I'm like, oh, I'm set to win this race. I had it in my head, and then that happened. And there was a lady beside me on a bike who was, she was like with the first female, just like kind of there to keep people out of my way and stuff. And I told her, I said, oh, my foot is done. And I like stopped on the side of the road for a second. She's like, just stretch it. And I'm like, oh, that's making it so much worse. I'm like, I think I've torn my like plantar fascia. I swear that's what it feels like. And she's like, do you want to keep going? And I'm like, man, like, what? I'm so far away from the finish line. What am I going to do? Like, somebody come pick me up and I'm going to have to watch that girl come back and pass me. Like, I can't do that. I'm worked so hard for this. I'm about to run my goal time, about to win. And I was like, I am going to get to that finish line. And I actually was almost like, I don't care if I don't break 3 hours. I'm going to win this thing. You know, whatever it takes. So it became like, I just looked at my watch and I was like, half mile time. Literally, I need to run 4 miles, 4.2 miles. And I'm just going to take it half mile at a time. And I was just like looking at my watch. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the longest half mile ever. And just literally, and then the last quarter mile, again, something happened. It got worse and I almost had to walk it in. But I made it to the finish line, and holy cow, I couldn't even stand up. And you wonder, it's so crazy, the human body, what it'll do to like get you through things, you know, adrenaline and whatever chemicals are being released to keep you from feeling all the pain, I think. Because when I stopped, I couldn't even stand, and I thought, I don't even know how I ran 4 miles like this. Yeah. It was crazy. But I still broke 3 hours somehow. I think it was like 2:57. I can't remember my exact time. And then, or maybe a little bit higher than that. But anyways, and then first place female, which was awesome. So
very cool.
Crazy experience. Really shows you that you can get through a lot more than you think. You know, it's wild what your body can do.
Absolutely. People talk about all the time the mental aspect of endurance, and I think it's the real deal. I always put in my head a little thing that I think about often is, a lot of people know about David Goggins. He's a pretty wild dude, does some pretty crazy shit. I like it. Some screws are loose with him, what he does, it's insane. But 100-mile run with no training, things like that are just absolutely nuts. But one takeaway from him that I always think about, and I think about it in my workouts, even training workouts, of when you feel like you're on death's door, you're done, you're ready to tap out, you're 40% through what your mind and body can do. Yeah. 40%. So I'm breaking it down in metrics, where if I have a 10-mile run, I'm at mile 4, and I instantly say, you got it. You got 10. Because you didn't die at 40%. You know, your mind can push you through a lot of things. And I think about that metric all the time in rides, runs, swims, everything. Of, you know, when you feel like crap, if you've already surpassed 40%, you're done. You got it. Do the whole race.
Exactly. No, and also just reminding yourself that it's just like pain and discomfort. That's all it is. It's just like sinking to your brain. Like, you can just accept that that's all it is, and just learn to like be okay in that feeling. You can do anything. It's so mental. It's ridiculous. Like, it's just being comfortable with that feeling and learning how to deal with it and just pushing yourself through it. And it's a lot of positive self-talk and just kind of taking things one little bit at a time. Those are usually my go-to tricks, is just talking nicely to myself and just breaking things down into segments and just being like, I can do this. Just another half mile. It's just pain. That's all it is. I've got this, you know?
Absolutely. There was a lady, I think it was, you've heard of the Barkley Marathons?
Yeah.
I think it's who won that. There was the first ever female finisher was this year. And amazing. For those that don't know, it's this ridiculous ultra marathon course, loop course, I think about 25 miles each for about a 100-mile race. And it's out in the middle of the sticks. You know, unguided, and you start and you go around one way, counterclockwise, then clockwise, then they loop you around, and it's some ungodly amount of elevation. But there's been usually 1 to 2 finishers every year out of, I don't know how many, do you think 50? But they had the first female finisher this year, and it was really impressive. Amazing job by her. And I think it was her that was talking about that place you go to when the pain cave, whatever you want to call it, when things get really tough. And she's like, I just wait for it. Like, I know I shine best when I'm uncomfortable. So I just start my workout, start the race, and get going, and wait till, okay, here it comes. I'm starting to feel like shit. Now I'm going to turn it up, and now I'm going to excel. And that's amazing. That's mental. You know, obviously that's mental.
Yeah, you get to that point in the Ironman, especially like without fail. I had never really experienced anything like that in my life until I did an Ironman. Even in the training leading up to it, I thought the training was so hard, and then I was like, I've totally got this. And then I'm racing, and I was like, I have never been in this. I've never felt like this before. Like, just so incredibly tired, in so much pain. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I have to. And just, you feel just this, it's insane. It's like nothing you've ever experienced in your life. And you learn so much about yourself in that moment and what you're capable of. And then when you finish, it is like no feeling ever. When you've gotten through that and you've spent your entire day dreaming of the finish line and wondering if you're going to make it, then you get there and you see the red carpet and you're just like, I literally cannot believe that I'm right here. It's crazy. It almost doesn't even feel real. And it's a wild feeling. And that's why it's so addictive. And people usually like, well, just sign up for another one right then and there. And it's like, you don't forget about your entire race. I can't tell you how many marathons and the Ironmans that I've done. I don't even remember the marathon hardly. I blacked it out like completely. And then you sign up and you do another one and you remember very quickly how difficult it was.
Did Mike Riley, did he call you in when you finished?
Yeah, I'm very lucky I got that. It's something you dream. It's so silly, but it means the world when you hear that. It's like, Lauren Hite, you're an Ironman. It's the coolest thing ever.
His book, I listened to his audiobook. I don't know if have you listened to it?
No, I haven't, but I've heard it.
Really good. And, basically this guy has called in how many years worth of Ironman races and travels all over, and he's the voice of Ironman, basically. And a lot of people, I think he went to Lake Placid this year and called the race.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
I had 4 or 5 people I knew from this area that went up there and did it, and that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great race too, Lake Placid. It is. It's a good one. It's hard, but it's a good one. I haven't done it, but I've always wanted to.
Yeah, it's close by. Maybe that'll be on the list. So what was your time of your first Ironman? Do you recall the time? How long did it take you?
10 hours. I am so bad. It's crazy. I should know my times. I am the worst with times. I cannot remember the exact time, but I know it was 10 hours something. I got second in my age group. And I believe 10th overall female. And so that's when I kind of knew. And my coach, Natasha, we kind of talked that I was going to try to turn pro. And we knew if my first Ironman went that well with like 7 months of training, I believe, then might as well see what I can do. And then my next race was Ohio 70.3. I got third overall. Which would have actually qualified me for my pro license, but there was not a pro field in that race, which that is a requirement to get your pro license to be eligible. Then the next race was, I believe it was Waco 70.3. I got first overall amateur female in that race. And then I took my pro license at that point. And then I did one more race as an amateur, Ironman Arizona. I think I got second overall. And at that point, we decided to just go ahead and race pro from then on. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just absolutely amazing. I don't think it's hard to describe in words and explain. I mean, just to do that is fantastic.
Yeah, I turned down my Kona spot for that too. I did get a Kona spot, and I didn't want to race amateur anymore, so I let that go. So I've never been to Kona.
Really? So that's how that works. If you Kona is for age groupers. Is that how that works?
No, it's for everyone. But if I had decided to race Kona, I qualified as an amateur, so I would have had to stay amateur again and to race that, which I was like, nah, I want to race pro, so I actually let my spot go. But people ask me all the time, they're like, have you ever been to Kona? I'm like, nope. I actually had a spot and I turned it down, passed it on to someone else. So
that's wild. Pro triathlete. Well, let me take a step. One thing I find really interesting about triathlon, and I've told to a few people, is that there's not many, if any, sports where when I go to race, I'm racing alongside the best in the world. And that's what's so cool, that you're in the same race as a professional. You don't get to go play hockey with Sidney Crosby and play in a game. It just doesn't work that way. I found that fascinating, that we're all humans. We all put our shorts on the same way. They excel, and I get to go there and compete on the same conditions, rain, sun, wind, everything as the best in the world. And that's pretty badass.
It's a special thing about our sport. There really is. And the thing is that just having the pros there, and you even go and watch the races and just being able to see them and see what they're doing and learn from them. And they're all there setting up their bikes the same way you are. You can approach them. They're almost all of them are so nice and approachable. And that's the cool thing, is just like, you're not having to like get some pit pass or something to like go talk to them. They're right there with you in the transition. It's so cool.
Absolutely. I found that really interesting and just a fun part of it. Ties to my whole love of all of it is the people. There's so many great people, kind, hardworking, and they just fit what I want to surround myself with. Because I'm a firm believer in, who you surround yourself with. Top 5 people, you'll be the 6th type of thing. And those people have been great to meet and get to know, and admirable. I just admire some of them and what they do. It's pretty amazing.
Everyone in the endurance community is so supportive, and it's awesome too, because you guys all have that kind of common ground, and you just kind of understand these things that people who aren't doing it, they just don't really get why you're doing it. When you have that, it makes it easy to make friends, because you guys think the same. And it's a great way to make friends. It's super easy. I mean, literally just show up to like a training ride, you'll make a ton of friends, or any race. It's just, if you put yourself out there, it's very, very easy to make friends in triathlon and in endurance sports in general.
Absolutely. I don't know if I ever shared with you the first experience I had with triathlon. I was down in Hilton Head and knew nothing, just with family vacation, had my kids down there, my sister, brother, mom, and they had a sprint triathlon on the beach of Hilton Head. And I just walked out to the beach to have coffee and hang out, and I'm looking at all these racers and these people and healthy people and smiling and motivated. I'm like, this is cool. I'm going to sit here and watch this, whatever this is. I know what a triathlon is, but I've never seen it. And I was standing there and talking to this, well, it was a mom and her daughter. And the daughter was racing, and she was not in the best shape, little overweight, and she was really emotional and nerved up, and I just happened to be standing beside them. So I said, like, is this your first race? And she said, yeah, I've never done something like this before. I'm nervous. And I instantly felt like, you got it, girl. Like, come on. And her mom was all proud of her. And it was just a really like touching, like, wow, this girl's getting uncomfortable. So she took off on the swim, did her thing. It's ocean swim. She was towards the end of the pack, or last, coming in, and I'm like cheering for her like I'm her brother. Like, I was all pumped up. I forget her name. I wish I could remember, but I'm yelling and screaming with her mom, like I'm part of the family. Like, I met this girl 20 minutes before. But to watch her come out of the water, suffering, got on the bike, did her thing, I was just like, this is amazing. This girl just went for it. And it was shortly thereafter that I decided I wanted to try it. But it was just a cool experience to see someone be in that vulnerable place.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. If you're ever like feeling low on motivation and you've been training for a while and haven't done a race or anything, you don't have one on the calendar for a bit, if you just go watch triathlon, usually you get that excitement, that feeling again. I mean, I love watching people finish them, and I get emotional every time. It never gets old, and that always fires you up again. It's a great way to get your motivation back if you're kind of in a training slump.
Absolutely. Question for you. We have the Olympics going on right now. Is there overlap with pro triathletes in the Olympics? Are those pros like that do Ironman sanctioned events then go do the Olympics? Like, how does the Olympic triathlon field work?
They're doing the shorter distance in the Olympics. There's not like an Ironman. I think people would get bored watching that length of time of people racing. But yeah, it's more the shorter distance triathletes, the pro triathletes in that, and not really. I don't do short distance racing. That is not my thing. I'm not fast twitch, so I just stay with the long races. But yeah.
What distance is so Olympic does the Olympic distance? That's what it. That obviously. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So they don't do anything longer than that there.
No, not that I know of. And yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Olympic triathlon.
I never thought of it because I didn't know anything about triathlon prior to a couple years ago. So then when I saw it this Olympics, I was curious of how that overlapped, and is it kind of that's your gig and we're over, us Ironmen are over here, you Olympians are over here, kind of seems that way?
The thing is, so with me especially, and people that are new to triathlon and don't have a swim background, honestly, it would be really, really hard to become an Olympian or an Olympic triathlete or be professional at the shorter distance, because your swim just has to be so good to even keep up with them. Yeah, from the get-go. If your swim is not there, you're not catching them on the bike unless you're, I don't even know. Just doesn't even happen. They're strong on all the disciplines. You gotta be there at all the disciplines. The longer distance, the further you go, the more you can get away with. Maybe your swim's not that great, but you can catch them on the bike, because there's so much time for things to happen, especially in an Ironman. You do not know what's going to happen. I mean, somebody can be leading and then they get sick and they're throwing up, and then they're out of the race, they get hurt, whatever. I mean, there's just a lot of things that can happen. So it really makes it a little bit more interesting, because you just don't know who's going to win.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's why, especially for me, I didn't have a swim background. The longer the distance, better I'm going to do. The half distance, even the 70.3s, that's hard for me. Even I have to be on point from the swim on to even keep up, or they're gone and I'm not catching them. So
you've told me that of keeping their feet, when you're swimming, staying with them, swim drafting is a real thing. You can get in a flow, and it'll really help you. And
yeah, that's the thing, is that if the pros, they start like a mass start. We all start at the same time, and so you go out fast, and you need to make sure that you stay on someone's feet, or as soon as you fall back, it's like rubber band snaps. They've left you, and now you're swimming alone, and you're gonna get further and further behind. So it's an adrenaline rush. You're just like, I cannot, I have to do everything I can to make sure that I stay on this person's feet and that they do not get away from me, or I am screwed. Yeah. So yeah, it's very nerve wracking. I think Montreal was my first pro Ironman, and I was right behind this girl the whole swim, and I just was in full-blown panic mode for the entire 2.4 miles, being like, I cannot let her go, I cannot let her go. And if she got a little bit away, I had to work so hard just to stay right there. And it's just so important, because I knew if she was gone, I was going to be swimming alone, and I just would get slower and slower. I have to use that draft to my advantage when I'm a weaker swimmer. It is what it is. So
yeah, no, it makes sense. I've tried that lately. I've tried to incorporate that and think about following someone and staying with someone rather than swimming alone. Because like I told you, when you're scared of swimming and when you're new to any of this, if anyone's going to try it, my methodology right out the gates was go wide and stay away from everyone. Mm-hmm. And that's the opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Because I didn't want to get kicked, and I just thought I want to be alone and I don't want to be bothered, and but it really is the opposite. You got to get in there, lock in with someone.
When you get competitive, you realize you can save a lot of energy that way, and you can swim way faster, half the effort, just drafting off of someone. But it does take practice. It's easier said than done. I tell people how to do all the time. They go on a race, like, wow, it was so hard. I'm like, yeah, it is hard, especially. And so the thing is that when you try to do it as an amateur too, it's even harder, because people aren't as good swimmers usually. The pros more likely to swim in a more straight line, and it may be a little bit easier to follow them than some of the amateurs. You pick the wrong person and they're zigzagging all over the place, and you wonder why you can't hold their feet. It's time to find a new person to follow.
We had, being this race that I just did, and there's new racers there and stuff. I mean, there was people mid-swim took their wetsuit off, mid-swim threw it on a kayak. I've seen people breaststroking 200 yards out there. It can be a bit chaotic, so I imagine being with some good swimmers makes it a little bit easier.
It does, yeah, definitely.
Through your process of being a pro, do you ever have to worry about watching what you eat? Because you burn so many calories all the time. I feel like I'm hungry all day, every day. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of sports where you have that. Talk about that. Did you have like a diet plan you worked on or are on as a pro, or was it just you got to get so many calories, you eat a lot? Talk about that.
I don't like to fill my calories with a bunch of junk food, because honestly, I just don't want to feel like crap. And I'm just kind of a creature of habit anyways. I eat the same thing like every day. But I do track food simply because especially when I'm doing that amount of activity, I will not eat enough trying to trust my hunger signals. I lose my hunger cues when I work out hard, honestly, especially with running. Really? Not hungry. After I'll run 20 miles with hard efforts, and then I'll come home and be like, I am not hungry. That's crazy. I just ran 20 miles. I can't trust my hunger cues when it comes to endurance training. So I track my food, which is kind of tedious when you're getting started in it. But after you get used to it and you kind of see things, it's really quite straightforward to make sure that I get enough. And I don't like to eat a whole bunch of junk. Not saying I don't treat myself, but I try to keep it pretty clean because I just feel better. Whatever I'm eating, I want to feel like I could go work out after I eat it. You know, not like go have pizza and I'm like, oh man, I need to take a nap. Like whatever I eat, I'm like, I could go on a run in like an hour. You know, it's just something super clean, super easy to eat. And that's usually what I stick to. And it makes me feel good. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Absolutely. Because if you go calorie depleting yourself and stuff like this, that's got to hurt your production. And
oh yeah, I've been there. Yeah, unintentionally under-eaten. And you know it, especially for me, the time I did it the most, not intentionally, was I would have like a big bike ride when I was in like an Ironman blog. Big bike ride on Saturday with run off, and then Sunday would be a long run. I would fuel my bike ride, maybe it was 5 hours, whatever, and then I would eat a little bit after, but I was like, oh, I had so much on the bike, I'm not even that hungry, like I'm good. And I'd wake up the next morning and I would be so exhausted and so tired, and this would happen for weekends and weekends and weekends, and I'd be like, well, I guess it's just because of that big bike ride. And I realized it was just simply that I was just not fueling enough. And then when I started to fuel, I'd wake up feeling like fine to go run. And that's how I should feel considering how hard I train, how fit I am. And it was just simply from fueling, was just holding me back. It's just not eating enough. That's why I see it's just as important as the training is to have enough fuel to do the training. Sure. If you notice, like truly you could work out all day if you ate enough. It's the biggest, most important piece of the puzzle. If you're not recovering, a lot of times, look into the food. You're probably just not eating enough. Simply, that's it. And you start eating and you're like, oh wow, like suddenly my HRV has gone up and my resting heart rate is lower, and it's just food. I've seen it myself happen so many times. Just fixing that, everything's good, and I'm training way better. Yeah. So.
No, that's great. And I noticed with alcohol that when my heart rate with alcohol, I don't drink much, but I remember there was a couple of runs where I would be like 20 beats per minute faster of a heart rate if I had a couple glasses of wine or some drink before. It's amazing how alcohol impacts the training. I stick to mainly any beer now. But
when I'm close to a race or anything like that, especially with Ironman training, I'm already trying so hard to recover as it is. Adding alcohol in there just makes it even harder. It's not even worth it to me. And you notice you have one drink, the next day your resting heart rate's like 5 beats higher, and your HRV's in the tank, and it's from one drink. And I think that's just so crazy, but that just shows how bad alcohol truly is for you. But not saying you don't deserve to have a drink every once in a while. It's fine. It's just the timing. You have to think about your goals and is it worth it to you? Yeah. And I just don't do it near races. So
no, I understand that fully. When you were racing, did you I don't believe in jinxing, but like, have you ever had that crash or anything with bike? Have you ever lost it on the bike?
No, almost. Yeah. Many times, almost. I've had people like cut me off or just like look down for a second to get nutrition, and the wind caught my wheel and pushed me out. I'm pointing at the grass and I don't even know how it happened, or like missing a pothole. I mean, definitely had lots of close calls. And if it was raining, I did a race in the rain, Waco 70.3. It was just soaking wet rain, crazy puddles everywhere. And some of those turns, back end slipped a little. I was like, oh man, I'm going down. Somehow saved it. I don't know if that's like motocross skills or what, but I definitely have gotten away with a lot of things I probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, the turns in the rain, you watch the time trials in the Olympics and those other things, and it's almost like they go into a turn prepared to fall. Like they're like, oh, okay, there we go. And they're just, it's like, holy cow, knock on wood. I also haven't taken a bike wipeout. I have a couple friends that have. It's certainly there. The element of danger is there. Going 23 miles on a bike,
and you're wearing lycra, and this pavement, it's just gonna hurt so bad. But you don't want to it's a balance, because you want to keep your speed in the turn. You don't want to hit the brakes and lose all that speed you worked so hard to build up. But you also don't want to go down. So it's just, you kind of learn just by riding and bike handling what you can really get away with.
Have you had any flats in races?
No, luckily I've not. And that's actually my biggest fear, is getting a flat. Truly though, if you have like tubeless tires, it shouldn't be the end of the world unless it's like a catastrophic like tire blowout. Generally you get tough flat and a tubeless tire, it's very quick and easy to fix.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something I definitely stress about. You know, you'll hit that pothole and you're just waiting to hear that air come out.
Yeah.
You're riding, you're like, am I good? And you're like, I cannot believe I got away with that.
Yeah, I've had it. And I just switched to tubeless. And I don't even know if I told you, when I was up in New England for this big race, doing that shakeout ride the day before, stopped at an intersection, had to kind of pull out in the main road. The trucks, you could see the truck. I'm with my brother-in-law and good buddy Mike, and pull out. And for some reason, I missed my clip in on the right side, so I had to look down and make sure the pedal was good and clip in. And as I did, I was going right off the side of the asphalt, just 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour. But I wanted to get over there because of cars, and I was like teetering on the edge of the asphalt and like trying to get the body lean to work, and the bike didn't want to. Tire went right off, and I'm in the dirt, and I'm trying to like jump the front end, because then I'm clipped in. I didn't want to just fall in the main road, and my tire was just grinding on the side of the sidewall of the tire on the side of the asphalt, and I'm like, I'm gonna blow a tire 9 hours before this race, and luckily I didn't. Did a little more ride, and you know, I don't want to say it's hard with a tubeless tire to blow it, but you know, they're pretty durable. So
yeah, no, they really are, and they're easy to fix, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think every race when I rack my bike, I'm just like, oh, okay, feel like I can breathe now, because all I have to do is run and like really, hopefully it's not a lot's going to go wrong there unless you just get injured. But it's generally like you don't have to worry about the mechanical side of things, which is really quite nice.
Yeah, the mechanical side of the bike is nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So you obviously evolved into coaching, which I think is wonderful, and you love it. You're really passionate about it, obviously, and it's very important to you. So was that something you always, because you also coach girls right now, right?
Yeah, I'm not doing that this year only because of flight school, but yes, I did coach a girls cross-country and track team through this past year. But yeah, I actually had never thought I would be a coach until I started doing triathlon, and I was like, I really love to coach people to do this, because it's just such a rewarding job to be able to be a part of someone's journey and to even better see them finish a race. I'll never forget my first athlete that I coached to an Ironman. I went to his race, and just watching him coming through the finishing chute and like the look on his face where he couldn't believe that he was there. And I'm like, this is so, I was just crying my eyes out. I was like, I can't even believe I got to be a part of this. And they're so grateful for your help and guidance. And it's like, you cannot beat it. It is so rewarding. And I love coaching. I truly do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great. And I highly, advise anybody who, wants to take it seriously to get, look into some coaching, because it is great. You can take it to a certain level, but learning the tips and tricks and have someone help you with it is a good process for sure.
Yeah. And the mental side of things too. I'm always like, I'm kind of like a therapist too. I mean, a lot of people just need, it's such a mental sport. It's not just the physical, but you kind of have to be there for people on the mental side too. It's very important. So there are lots of hats that I wear, but I love it. It's the most rewarding thing, and it just makes me so happy to be able to do that every day. So
yeah, I'm sure to see like you said, your athlete cross a line that you help them get there is pretty awesome feeling. Yeah. And
you know what they went through too. Like as being their coach, you saw all the struggles and the setbacks, and it just makes it that much sweeter when they cross the finish line. You know them better than most because you guys have been talking about every workout, every setback. It's truly like another feeling.
Yeah, the good and the bad. I'm a big, believer in that whole 30-30-30 rule of training of, 30% feel good, 30% feel so-so, 30% suck. And you have to embrace that workout sucked. And I felt like crap, maybe tired, maybe, fatigued, whatever it may be, or just something went off tracks, and just to stick through, because they're not all good. That's for sure. No, they're not. That's the thing, is people get really frustrated, and I'm just like, hey, it's just human nature. You're not always going to be on. It's not always going to be there. But, those workouts are what make you stronger. If you get through that workout that went so like you're bonking and everything hurts and it's like the hardest thing you've ever done, you have to realize that when you finish that, you've just built some mental strength that you will need on race day, because you're going to face adversity on race day. And every time you do that, you get stronger mentally, and you realize you can handle more than you thought you could. Yeah. So, and then everything else seems easier. So, absolutely. Yeah. You gotta look that way. Yep. No doubt about it. I'm just a big believer in, You know, when you overcome little hard things, big hard things, you don't forget them. You just go back and it's like, you can push through that. Like I told you the other day of doing 21 100 repeats in the pool, you know, 500 in, I'm like kind of gassed and kind of like, this is going to be really hard. I don't really know how I'm going to get through this. And you go and you go and you go, and then you're done. You're like, damn, you know, I was there.
And then you look back at other workouts and you're like, maybe those weren't so hard after all.
Absolutely.
And then the bar has been set higher and you just get stronger. That's why I say you do an Ironman, everything just seems so easy after that. You're like, oh my God, all the stuff I thought was so difficult is not that hard. And that's in life too. I mean, it's crazy how that can change your entire mindset around everything.
Absolutely, yeah. From a recovery, do you ever get into like the sauna world, cold plunge world, anything?
No, honestly.
No.
The only thing, I think the only thing is the Normatec, those, whatever you call them. I love those. I don't even know if they do anything, honestly, but you know, they feel great. And even if it's just mental, I'll take it. That's about the only thing.
Yeah.
I've done ice baths a little bit. I usually only do those if I'm like injured or something and I just need like stuff to calm down a little bit, the inflammation. Other than that, I'm not like the person who wakes up at 5 to jump in the cold plunge every morning, truly.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, it's just food, sleep, and yeah, that's it.
So this morning I woke up at 5 and got in the cold plunge. So
You're one of them?
I did do that actually today. But I do love it. I'm more of like 3 or 4 days a week now. I don't like to get in the cold plunge before swimming. Just because I don't know why. I'm getting wet and then get dry, then get wet, and I don't do it on swim days, but I do it a handful of days a week. Love it. It's just a good, I don't know, it's a good shot of dopamine and everything else, and the healing and the mental strength that correlate to doing something really hard. Because it's hard. I mean, you sit there and you're like, this sucks for 4 minutes, 3 minutes. You know, I rock like 38, 39 degrees for 3 minutes or 4 minutes. I put music on, whatever the song's done. I think I'm close, then last it out a little bit longer. But it is.
It'll wake you up, that's for sure.
It'll wake you up, no doubt. And I'd love to. Saunas are great. You know, the local pool, get in the sauna and sweat it out a little bit. So.
Yeah, the only time I really use sauna, it's not for recovery. It's just to build some heat acclimation usually.
Yeah.
Especially when I lived in Alaska, didn't get any heat checks. Funny, my first Ironman was Ironman Texas. Hot, so hot.
From Alaska.
Humid. Yes, and I had trained indoors, and I ran outside, but I did all my bike training indoors in a garage with every fan I had on me. No heat acclimation there. And then I was running outside in 0 degrees and doing long runs in the snow. And then I go to Texas and I'm just like, I remember like my first like shakeout run when I got there, my heart rate was so much higher than it usually is at the paces I was running in Alaska. And I was just like, well, this is going to be interesting. And I don't know, lots of help from the aid stations to get through that one. But I find that if you do sauna, maybe like for 20, 30 minutes a few times a week, it does make a difference in heat acclimation without taking a lot out of you. This is like doing actual like workouts where you're like suffering without fans and you've got like a sweatshirt on in your garage. The thing about that is that's going to take so much out of you. Now this workout that was hard is now extremely hard and you're going to be spending days in a hole from it. I just don't think that's the most productive way to do it unless triathlon's the only thing you're doing and you have the means to like recover from something like that, like sleep extra, you know, you're not on your feet at your job all day, that kind of thing. But the sauna is just, I think it's better. It's not going to hurt you so much just to do that a few times a week for not a very long time.
For heat acclimation. I've heard that you can get value out of that if you're going to have a hot race of do sauna time and your body will, you know, adapt. And that had to be tough from Alaska to Texas. I mean, workouts in Alaska have to be brutal. I was in Alaska once, 2014, did a fly-in, float-out caribou hunt in Alaska in the Brooks Range. Floated out the Ivashak River. Amazing. One of the coolest states ever. I tell people, like, you think your state's big. We flew in there and drove for 17 hours in the same state. Never left the state. Amazing. Past the Arctic Circle. Really, really cool. Where in Alaska was it that you were? I
was in Anchorage, for 8 years. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And wild weather, so you probably got used to some really cold runs, cold swims, cold everything.
It was so hard. Like, I'm not a morning person. I think the hardest part was just like going to the pool because I would go at 5 a.m. That was like my time because I didn't want a lot of people at the pool. I can't stand a crowded pool when I'm training hard. It just drives me crazy. I can't focus. So I would go at 5 a.m. it's so dark there in the winter. You just wake up, pitch black, 0 degrees, get in the car and go to the pool. The last thing I want to do. I hated doing that. But I would just kind of turn my brain off. Like, you know, you wake up, you're like, I don't want to do this. Like, just like, no, we're not even going to think about this. Just go through the motions. Like, get out of the bed, go drive to the pool and do it. And then as soon as you get going, you kind of forget about all that stuff and you're in it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's, that was the hardest part, truly, is just like getting up in the morning when it's just dark and cold. And then even just going out and running in it, putting on all those layers, a little headlamp. It's so brutal. I mean, it makes you tough, though. It really does.
We have periods here. We're in Northwest Pennsylvania. I mean, it's land of the gray, where we have so many time where it's dark, go to work, dark, get home from work. You know, periods of time where our winter drags on and it's gray, and it's just really tough to get motivated with that. But what I did about a year ago was just kind of, I'm done negotiating with myself. Mm-hmm. It's not an option. I have workouts this week that I know are coming. I consider it part of my work day. So my work day starts before the workout, and that's just part of my career and part of my work day and my path. So I just don't negotiate with myself. I used to. I'd be there of, you know, you could skip that one or do this one. It's just not really an option. Once switch that off, then it just makes it, you know, that much easier to do. Yeah,
you're right. That's the key. It's just it's non-negotiable. Like that's how you have to do it, because a lot of people wake up and like, I'll do it later tonight. And then something always happens. They're like, oh, I got caught at work late. Couldn't do the workout. You just got to be like, all right, my goals are important to me. I'm showing up for myself. Don't think about it so much. Just get out of the bed and go do it. And remember your why on the days that you are not motivated. Just remember, what are you trying to do here? Remember how important it is to you, and just show up and do it. And that little bit of effort every single day over time, it adds up. And that is how you make progress. But it's the consistency is like the biggest thing with people that are just missing workouts all over the place. They're not making progress and they're mad they're not making progress. I'm like, well, it's because you're not consistent. That's everything. And it's actually that easy. It's literally that easy. Just consistent work over time. That's how you.
Yeah. We were talking about it in showing up and consistency. And one thing that I think of often, I think it was maybe Jocko Willick or one of these guys that are pretty dedicated dudes. And he talked about, because people say, like, how many rest days do you take? You know, how many days a week do you work out? And as you know, right now I'm 13 days off, 1 day on pretty much every other Saturday with my kids. Just I do no workout. And I really liked what he said of, you know, don't take them. Don't take rest days or barely take them, because life will give you rest days. Like, you're going to have something come up where there's travel issues or tragedy, hopefully not, or something where you're going to be forced into a rest day here, a rest day there. So, you know, show up every day, because you know, you'll get them and they'll come. So I you know, that's kind of how I operate too, of, you know, as you know, sometimes schedule in life throws you a curveball and you can't do what you wanted to do. So when you can do it, you better do it.
Yeah, exactly. And also you do recover better with a little bit of like low intensity exercise anyway, versus just like sitting on the couch all day. But there is a time and place for it, you know, and especially you have to, I'm very keen on this, paying attention to the mental side of things.
Yeah.
I don't want to run anyone into burnout. I've been there many times. It's brutal. It's very hard to come back from. If I sense that we are trending in that direction, I'm like, hey, let's just take a week where you maybe don't work out for a week, or you do what you want for a week. And it is crazy what a couple of days off can do for somebody who is literally burning out. They'll be like, oh, I can't wait to train again after just a couple of days off. Certainly. You know, sometimes you just need that break. Yep. And that's totally fine. But also, you don't have to take rest days. You don't have to.
The beauty of triathlon, you know, it's not marathon training where you're beating your legs 5 days a week running.
Exactly.
I consider them days off when it's like, you know, I'm swimming today, so that is a leg day off, you know, because I suck at kicking anyways. But, you know, that's a great thing about multi-sport training, and people that just run, like to get into biking and bike run, you know, mixing it up, that really helps.
Yeah, because you can do other things when you get injured. That's why a lot of runners, or that's why a lot of triathletes were runners at one point, is they were running and could handle a lot of mileage like most people can't, and ended up doing biking or swimming to get over an injury, and like, oh, why don't I just do all three of these things and do triathlon, you know? So it's good to have options. It's the great thing about it, and you don't get bored.
Yeah, no, you don't get bored at all. So what would you, you know, in closing here, we'll start to wrap things up, but people that are maybe in a funk or stuck in the routine of life, or they need something different or struggling with motivation, what's something maybe you tell them, some tips or some ideas to get them going, get off the couch, try something hard, do something different? What would you tell them? if someone came to you and said, I'm struggling?
Simply just go do it. Just make it happen. You can't wait for motivation to get you started on something. That doesn't work, and motivation only lasts so long. So I don't ever use that as my primary reason for doing stuff. It's very much not how I do things. But just be like, I am going to do this, and make yourself do it. And it's crazy once you just show up and start doing it. It gets that much easier to stick with it. You end up having fun, and then you get, you're like, oh, I just want to do this all the time. It's just starting. That's all it is. And you have to just kind of force yourself to do it. And that's how it is with anything. I feel that way all the time with workouts. I'm like, I don't want to do this right now. And then just stop thinking about it. Go start the workout, and you'd be surprised. Now you're smiling. And you're like, well, that's funny, because about 20 minutes ago, I was so grumpy about doing this. And it's just making yourself go do it and get started and stop making excuses. Just go do it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Accountability to yourself.
Yep.
It's huge. And I look back at parts of my life where I was not accountable to myself, and I made mistakes, and I was just weak, where I let these things come in and out of my life that I just wasn't good enough, wasn't accountable to do it. You let self-doubt and just, what's right and wrong. When you're negotiating with your own mind, but you got to shut it out and just do it. Yeah. And
you're showing up for yourself. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, you're doing this for your health and your mental health and all kinds it's great for you. So just think of it that way. This is just showing up for yourself. It's a great, wonderful thing. Yeah. And to be able to even do that is so awesome. There's so many people who can't run or can't do any of this stuff, and it's like, to complain about it, it just seems ridiculous. You have to do that.
It feels like an honor to be able to do it sometimes.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You see people that are injured and these paraplegics, tragic deaths and things that I've seen as of late in my life, and I've thought of them in the heat of a really hard workout. Of that person that just passed away at 30 years old from brain cancer. They would love to be suffering where I am.
Yeah.
They would love to feel this leg pain. They would love to be sweating their ass off. And I think of that a lot. We're lucky to be able to do it, so why not do it?
Actually, funny, I have a story that's very similar to that. I used to work as a radiation therapist when I was in Alaska, and I had this patient, and he's no longer with us, but I remember he was a young guy. He was in a triathlon, and he was very sick, couldn't do his training anymore, and I remember he was telling me he just was trying, but he couldn't. It was just wearing him out so much, and I remember I had complained that morning to myself about doing this bike workout, and it just hit me, and I was like, man, I can't believe you were complaining about doing it. This guy would do anything to be able to do what you're doing, and it really changed my mindset about things, and I just always go back to that when you're just like, I don't want to do this, be like, but I can do this. How wonderful is that? I never take that for granted, because it can be taken away from you in an instant.
Yeah, sure can. And I think that's a great way to look at it. I try to do the same, and I think that'd be good advice for people too, or a takeaway would be, think of others that would love to trade places. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, well, Lauren Hite, you're awesome.
Hey.
You're a friend and a badass girl, like I said in the beginning, and a shining light in the world of endurance sports and triathlon. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate you talking for a little bit and giving people insight on that and who you are, what you do. And it was really a great conversation.
Yeah, have fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
ALFA Endurance. Be authentic, be accountable, be disciplined.